I used to think my life had already been lived. At 66, I'd checked all the boxes a woman of my generation was expected to: marriage, children, a home kept together through both chaos and calm. My husband Richard had passed 5 years earlier, and I had slipped quietly into the role of widow dutiful, dependable, the reliable grandmother who made casseroles and showed up for babysitting whenever called upon. But no one tells you how lonely the nights can be, how silence stretches when the house is dark, and how your heart aches not just from age but from longing. I had convinced myself this was simply how the rest of my life would be: narrow, predictable, fading softly like an old photograph. Then my own heart betrayed me. It began with breathlessness, the kind that made walking up the stairs feel like climbing a mountain. The doctors said it was serious blockages, weakening tissue, a ticking clock I could no longer ignore. Surgery was recommended, urgent but promising. They assured me it would extend my life. Yet, as I lay in the sterile hospital bed the night before, staring at the blank ceiling tiles, I wondered if extending my life would matter if I had nothing worth living for. That was when Lucas Whitmore walked into my world. He wasn't supposed to be part of my story. A renowned cardiologist, mid-50s, tall with a presence that drew eyes without him asking for it. His salt and pepper hair and steady voice carried both authority and warmth. He introduced himself as part of the surgical team. But there was something different in the way he looked at me, not just as a patient chart, but as a person. "Mrs. Lane," he said that first evening, "you're in capable hands." "I'll be overseeing your procedure tomorrow, Evelyn," I corrected softly. "I've been Mrs. Lane my whole life. I'd like to just be Evelyn here." A flicker of a smile touched his lips. "Then, Evelyn it is. You'll do fine. Trust me." It was an ordinary reassurance, yet I clung to it as if it were a lifeline. The surgery went well, though recovery was slow. Every breath reminded me of my fragility. Lucas checked in daily, though he could have easily left it to residents. He asked questions beyond my vitals: how I was sleeping, what books I liked, whether I had family nearby. Family. That word carried weight. My son Daniel and his wife Nora visited the hospital once more out of obligation than concern. They had busy lives, careers, children, schedules that seemed to leave little room for me. When Lucas asked about my support system, I hesitated before answering. "They have their own responsibilities," I said carefully. His eyes softened, as if he understood more than I had spoken. One afternoon, after most of the tubes had been removed and I could shuffle slowly to the hospital window, I caught sight of him leaving the building. He was laughing with a nurse, the kind of easy laugh of a man who had not forgotten how to enjoy life. Something in me stirred, something that had been buried beneath years of loss and duty. I quickly turned away, embarrassed by the flutter in my chest. This was ridiculous. He was a doctor. I was his patient. That was all. A week later, I was discharged. The house felt colder than ever when I returned, as if it had forgotten how to hold warmth. Nora had stocked the fridge with a few groceries, and Daniel had carried in my suitcase before leaving quickly for a work call. "Rest, Mom," he'd said, kissing my forehead distractedly. "We'll check in soon." But the check-ins never came. Days passed in silence. So when my phone buzzed unexpectedly one evening and Lucas's name appeared, I nearly dropped it. "Evelyn," his voice came warm through the receiver. "Forgive the intrusion. I just wanted to know how you're adjusting at home," I swallowed. "Lonely," I admitted before I could stop myself. There was a pause. Then he said gently, "Would you allow me to visit? Just to be sure you're recovering well." I should have refused. I knew the boundaries, but my heart, still stitched and fragile, whispered yes before my mind could argue. When he arrived the next afternoon, carrying a small box of pastries from a local bakery, I felt my cheeks flush like a schoolgirl. We sat in my kitchen, sunlight spilling across the table, and for the first time in years, I laughed. He told me about his early career, the mistakes he'd made, the long hours he regretted. I shared stories of Richard, of raising Daniel, of the silly antics of my grandchildren. It felt effortless, as though we had known each other far longer than a handful of weeks. At one point, he leaned forward, studying me. "Do you realize how remarkable you are, Evelyn? To go through what you did and still find humor, still be gracious." I looked down, uncomfortable with praise. "I've spent a lifetime being useful. That's not the same as remarkable it is to me," he said quietly. The words lodged in my chest, both terrifying and thrilling, of course. Not everyone saw it that way. When Nora discovered Lucas had been visiting, her reaction was immediate and sharp. "Mom, do you realize how this looks?" she demanded one Sunday afternoon, her manicured nails tapping impatiently against my counter. "You're barely out of surgery and already entertaining your doctor. People will talk." "Let them," I replied, surprising myself with the firmness in my voice. Her eyes narrowed. "This could affect Daniel's firm. Lucas is connected to donors, hospitals, foundations. Do you think it's wise to complicate those circles with whatever this is?" This, I said evenly, is friendship, and maybe something more. Either way, it's mine. For once, she had no quick retort, but I knew the battle was only beginning. That night, Lucas texted me dinner this weekend. Nothing fancy. Just two people enjoying each other's company. I stared at the screen, my heart thudding louder than it should have for someone still in recovery. And I typed the word that would change everything. Yes. I had not been on a real date in over 40 years. Even the word date felt foreign on my tongue. Like something belonging to teenagers or young couples strolling hand in hand at the movies. Yet there I was, standing before the mirror in my bedroom, holding up blouses one after another as if the choice between navy and lavender mattered more than life and death. Lucas had been precise in his invitation. Nothing fancy. A quiet dinner, comfortable and still. My pulse raced. I finally settled on a soft ivory sweater with a simple strand of pearls Richard had given me decades ago. When I caught my reflection, I didn't see a glamorous woman. I saw myself lines etched by time, silver streaks running through my hair, a body softened by age. But my eyes, I realized, still carried light. Perhaps that was enough. He picked me up promptly at 7. No white coat, this time just a navy blazer over an open-collared shirt. He looked relaxed, approachable, and yet still carried that quiet authority that made heads turn. "You look lovely, Evelyn," he said, his gaze lingering a moment longer than politeness required. "Thank you," I murmured, suddenly, conscious of the pearls at my throat. The restaurant was a small Italian place tucked into a corner of the city. Dim lighting, wooden tables, the faint strains of a violin drifting from unseen speakers. It felt intimate without being ostentatious. Over pasta and wine, conversation flowed as easily as it had in my kitchen. We spoke of books, music, places we wished we had traveled. He confessed that he had once dreamed of being a painter before medicine claimed him. I admitted I had always longed to visit Paris, but life, obligations, and finances had kept that dream shelved. "Paris," he repeated thoughtfully, twirling his glass. "I can see you there, walking along the Seine, notebook in hand, describing the world around you." I laughed. "You give me too much credit. These days my adventures are limited to the grocery store." Then, perhaps it's time that changes. The words hung between us. A possibility too bold to acknowledge yet impossible to ignore. When he drove me home, he walked me to the door like a gentleman from another era. I hesitated, fingers resting on the handle, the silence thick with unspoken questions. "Lucas," I said finally, "why me?" He tilted his head. "Why not you?" "Because I'm older. Because I've lived a life already. Because Evelyn," his voice cut gently through my protest. "You are alive. You are interesting. You make me laugh. You make me feel something I haven't felt in years. That is enough." My throat tightened. For so long I had been invisible, reduced to roles, mother, grandmother, widow. Now someone saw me, not for what I could provide, but for who I was. I whispered goodnight, slipped inside and leaned against the door, my heart pounding not from weakness, but from possibility, of course. Not everyone shared my exhilaration. Nora noticed the glow almost immediately. "You look different," she said one afternoon when she stopped by, her tone hovering between suspicion and accusation. "I feel different," I admitted. Her brows arched. "Because of Dr. Whitmore." I didn't answer, which was answer enough. Nora exhaled sharply. "Mom, you need to think about what you're doing. He's powerful. Connected. If you start a relationship with him, it could affect Daniel's career. Clients talk. Appearances matter." There it was, again appearance. My worth measured against their social ambitions. For once, I said firmly, "My choices are not about appearances. They are about me." Her eyes flashed, but I held her gaze. She left soon after, lips pressed tight, leaving behind a trail of disapproval that no amount of air freshener could erase. Lucas continued to call to visit. He brought books he thought I'd enjoy, playlists of music to help me rest, stories from the hospital that made me laugh until I had to clutch my chest in mock protest. Each interaction was simple, ordinary even, yet extraordinary to me. And then came the invitation that shifted everything. "A gala," he explained, his eyes twinkling with mischief. "Formal, black tie. It's for cardiac research. I'd like you to join me." My jaw nearly dropped. "Lucas, I can't. I don't belong at those things. I don't have the gowns, the presence. You belong wherever you choose to be," he said gently. "And as for gowns, I know someone who can help." I shook my head, flustered. But deep down, a flicker of excitement sparked. The thought of walking beside him into a glittering hall, of being seen not as someone's mother or grandmother, but as his companionate was terrifying, exhilarating, and impossible to resist. The following week, a man named Charles arrived at my door with a rolling rack of dresses, a stylist, and a makeup artist. I nearly fainted at the extravagance. Lucas insisted. Charles explained with a kind smile. He wants you to feel comfortable and extraordinary. Extraordinary. The word felt foreign yet sweet. We spent hours trying gowns, navy silks, burgundy velvets, silver sequins, but when I stepped into an emerald green dress, something shifted. The color made my eyes brighter, my silver hair luminous. The stylist clapped her hands. "This is the one," she declared. For the first time in decades, I saw myself not as fading, but as radiant. The night of the gala arrived. Lucas appeared in a perfectly tailored tuxedo, every inch the distinguished doctor. But when his eyes landed on me, dressed in emerald, his expression softened into something far more personal. "You take my breath away, Evelyn," he whispered. Taking my hand, my knees nearly gave out. We drove to the Symphony Hall, where flashes of cameras greeted us on the red carpet. Panic bubbled in my chest, but Lucas's steady hand at my back grounded me. "Just look at me," he murmured. "You're safe." Inside, chandeliers sparkled above a sea of gowns and tuxedos. The air buzzed with wealth and ambition. Lucas introduced me simply as Evelyn Lane, my guest this evening, offering no further explanation. The ambiguity drew curious glances, but he seemed to enjoy their speculation. "Let them wonder," he whispered with a smile. I was beginning to relax when a familiar voice sliced through the hum. "Dr. Whitmore." What a surprise! Nora, standing with Daniel at her side, dressed in a gown that probably cost more than my yearly pension. Her smile was dazzling, but her eyes sharp. "Mrs. Lane," Lucas replied politely. "Mr. Lane, good evening." Nora's gaze flicked between us, calculating. "We had no idea you'd be attending with family." "I'm not here with family," Lucas said smoothly, his hand finding the small of my back with unmistakable intent. "I'm here with my date." Date. The word detonated in the air like fireworks. Nora's smile faltered for the first time. I could remember. Daniel looked as if I'd just announced I was running away to join the circus. "Your date," Nora repeated, her voice thin. "Yes," Lucas confirmed, calm and unapologetic. "Evelyn and I have been getting to know each other. When I learned she was recovering from surgery, it seemed fitting to invite her to an event supporting cardiac research," Daniel sputtered. "Mom, you never told us." "There are many things I don't tell you," I interrupted, surprising even myself. My personal life being one of them. The silence that followed was delicious. For once, I was not shrinking to fit their expectations. I was standing, radiant in emerald, beside a man who saw me as worthy of being chosen, and from the look in Nora's eyes, I knew this was only the beginning of a new battle. The morning after the gala, I woke with aching feet, a sore jaw from smiling too much, and a strange lightness in my chest that had nothing to do with my heart surgery. I padded into the kitchen, still wearing the faint scent of Lucas's cologne on my shawl. For once, the silence of my house did not feel heavy. It felt like possibility. But I should have known peace wouldn't last long. By noon, Nora arrived announced. As always, she breezed through the door, heels clicking, perfume saturating the air like a warning. "Well," she began, tossing her clutch onto the counter. "That was quite a performance last night." I poured coffee into 2 mugs, though I wasn't sure why I bothered. "Performance? Yes. You and Dr. Whitmore, parading around like. She searched for a word sharp enough to wound. "Teenagers." I set her mug down firmly. "We attended a gala. We enjoyed ourselves. That's all. That's all." She let out a brittle laugh. "Mom, people were talking. Daniel's clients were whispering. Do you understand how embarrassing that was? To see my widowed mother draped on the arm of one of the most respected surgeons in the city?" Something in me snapped. "Nora, for once in your life, stop worrying about what other people think. I am not draped on anyone's arm. I was invited as his guest, and I accepted. That's all there is to it." Her lips pressed into a thin line. "She didn't take the coffee. She didn't take the hint. This is reckless," she said finally. "And selfish. Selfish." The word hit like a slap. All my life I had bent myself into shapes that served others. Cooking meals, mending clothes, babysitting grandchildren, attending recitals and board meetings, keeping house and secrets alike. If anyone had earned the right to a little selfishness, it was me. "I won't apologize," I said quietly. Nora stared, disbelief etched into every line of her face. Then, with a flick of her hair, she stormed out, leaving the coffee untouched and my kitchen colder than before. That evening, Lucas called. "I hope last night didn't cause too much trouble," he said. I considered lying, brushing it off, but something in his voice made me tell the truth. Nora was furious. "She thinks I've embarrassed her." He sighed. "Evelyn, you don't need to justify your happiness to anyone, least of all to people who only measure their worth in appearances." His certainty steadied me. For years I had been a reed in the wind of my children's opinions, But Lucas's presence was like bedrock's solid grounding. Still doubts lingered. What if she's right? What if this is foolish? Then let it be foolish, he said softly. Let it be yours. I closed my eyes, letting his words settle in the cracks where fear had lived for so long. The weeks that followed were a strange mixture of sweetness and storm. Lucas and I grew closer. We spent afternoons strolling through the park, evenings watching old movies, mornings sipping coffee while discussing everything from politics to poetry. He was patient with my hesitations, tender with my insecurities, and unexpectedly playful. One evening, we cooked together in my kitchen. He insisted on making risotto, though it quickly became apparent he had no idea what he was doing. You're supposed to stir constantly, I teased, watching him abandon the spoon to pour wine. I'm a surgeon, Evelyn. Precision is my specialty. Then consider this your most delicate operation yet. He laughed, deep and genuine, and in that moment I realized I hadn't laughed like that in years. The risotto was terrible, but the evening was perfect. Meanwhile, Nora's disapproval hardened into something sharper. She began dropping by less to see me and more to lecture me. Each visit carried a new arsenal of accusations. People are saying you're chasing his money. You're making yourself look ridiculous. Do you realize how this could damage Daniel's reputation? Each barb chipped away at my peace, but with every attempt to shame me, I grew a little more resistant. Like a callus forming over a wound, my heart toughened. Still, she found new ways to strike. One afternoon, she arrived with a photo granny, clearly taken with a phone. It showed Lucas and me at the park, sitting on a bench, his hand resting lightly over mine. Do you know where this ended up? She demanded, thrusting her phone toward me. A gossip website. The headline screamed, "Renowned surgeon spotted with mystery woman." My stomach twisted. How did they? Because he's prominent, Mom. Everything he does is news. And now you're part of it. Her eyes glittered, not with concern, but with triumph. She wanted me rattled. I set the phone down carefully, then let them talk. Her mouth fell open. She hadn't expected defiance. You're choosing him over us? She said finally, her voice trembling with a mixture of rage and something almost like fear. No, I corrected gently. I'm choosing me. But beneath my newfound courage, doubts still gnawed. At night, when the house was dark and Lucas wasn't there to anchor me, questions whispered. Was I too old to start over? Was I clinging to something fleeting? Would I end up hurt? Abandoned? Humiliated? I didn't voice these fears to Lucas. Not yet. Instead, pages filled with half-formed sentences, confessions too raw to share aloud. I feel alive again, but is it real? Or just a second chance I don't deserve? One Saturday, Lucas surprised me with tickets to the symphony. The hall glowed with golden light, music swelling like something from another world. During intermission, we wandered the lobby, sipping champagne. That's when I heard my name hissed like a curse. Evelyn, Nora, again. She was everywhere, as if she had appointed herself guardian of my morality, Mom. This has gone far enough, she said, clutching my arm hard enough to bruise. End this now. Before you destroy everything. Before I could respond, Lucas appeared, his expression calm but firm. Mrs. Lane, he said evenly, I think you should let your mother enjoy her evening. Her grip loosened, but her glare intensified. You don't understand, Dr. Whitmore. You're putting ideas in her head. She doesn't need romance. She needs stability, routine, family perhaps. What she needs, Lucas replied, slipping his arm around me, is joy. The word landed like a thunderclap. For the rest of the concert, I could barely hear the music. My heart was too loud. Later that night, Lucas walked me to my door, as he always did. But instead of stepping back, he lingered. Evelyn, he murmured, his hand brushing mine. I don't want to rush you, but I also don't want to pretend anymore. Pretend. That this is casual. That it's temporary. The truth is, I care for you deeply. My breath caught. I had longed to hear those words, yet feared them too. I care for you too, I admitted, my voice trembling. He leaned closer, hesitated, and then finally our lips met. Gentle, tentative, like the opening notes of a song we had only just begun to play. It was not the wild passion of youth. It was something steadier, sweeter, richer, a promise that even in the autumn of life, spring could bloom again. Asterisk, the days after that first kiss blurred into something softer, sweeter. Every time my phone buzzed with a message from Lucas, a warmth spread through me that had nothing to do with wine or sunshine. He was careful, always mindful of my pace. Sometimes we met for coffee, sometimes for long walks. Sometimes we did nothing more than sit in the quiet of my living room, listening to music, sharing stories. It wasn't the grand gestures that bound me closer, but the simple ones, his hand covering mine. The way he listened as if my every word carried weight, and yet, beneath the tenderness, a shadow lengthened. Nora's disapproval had not quieted. It had sharpened. One Tuesday morning, I stopped by the bank to update some paperwork. The teller handed me a form to sign, and as I scanned it, a strange transaction caught my eye. A large withdrawal from one of my accounts, made just the week before. I didn't authorize this, I said, my pulse quickening. The teller frowned. It was processed with power of attorney. Your daughter Nora Lane? For a moment, the room tilted. Nora had managed my finances for years, something I had allowed without question. But to take thousands without telling me? I left the bank shaken, clutching the receipt like evidence of betrayal. That evening I confronted her. Nora, did you take money from my account? She didn't flinch. Yes. Daniel needed an advance for an investment. You wouldn't understand the details. Nora, that's my savings. You had no right. I had every right. You gave me power of attorney. I'm protecting you from yourself, protecting me. The arrogance of it left me breathless. I want the money returned, I said, my voice low but steady, her eyes narrowed. Mom, don't be naive. If you keep up this nonsense with Dr. Whitmore, you'll need me more than ever. Do you think he really cares about you? He's wealthy, powerful. You're convenient. That's all. The words cut deep, but somewhere beneath the sting, fury bloomed. Double quotes, no, Nora, I said, surprising even myself with the steel in my tone. You need me. For money? For appearances? For control? But I don't need you to live my life for the first time. I saw fear flicker in her eyes. Lucas noticed my unease the next time we met. You're quiet tonight, he said. Pouring me a cup of tea, I told him everything the bank. The confrontation, the venom in Nora's words. He listened without interruption, his jaw tightening as I spoke. Evelyn, he said finally, this is abuse. Subtle, insidious, but abuse all the same. She's not protecting you. She's controlling you. I swallowed hard, but she's my daughter. Blood does not excuse cruelty. His certainty made my chest ache. For years I had excused, rationalized, minimized, because that's what mothers do. But Lucas was right. Love should not look like theft and manipulation. Nora, however, was not finished. One afternoon, Lucas appeared at my door earlier than usual, his expression unusually grave. She came to see me, he said. My stomach dropped. Who? Your daughter? Nora? I gripped the arm of the sofa. What did she say? He hesitated, clearly weighing how much to share. She suggested that I end things with you, that I reconsider. For the sake of my reputation, shame washed over me, hot and suffocating. Oh God, Evelyn. His voice was gentle but firm. I told her no. I told her that my choices are my own and that I care for you. But she wanted to humiliate you, to make you feel small. Don't let her succeed. Tears pricked my eyes. Not because of Nora's cruelty, I was almost used to that, but because Lucas had stood beside me, unwavering. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, memories looping like film reels. The decades I had spent putting everyone else first, the sacrifices unnoticed, the gratitude never voiced. And now, when I dared to claim even a sliver of happiness, my own daughter turned it into a weapon. At dawn, I rose and wrote in my journal, this is not about Lucas. This is about me. About whether I will live the rest of my life in fear of disapproval or in pursuit of joy for the first time. The answer felt clear. Lucas must have sensed the shift in me. The next weekend, he suggested a drive. We left the city behind, winding through rolling hills until we reached a small vineyard. Rows of green stretched under the sun, and the air smelled of earth and promise. As we walked between the vines, he took my hand. Evelyn, I know your family's resistance weighs on you. I don't want to cause division. If you ask me to step back, I will. I stopped, forcing him to face me. Lucas, don't you see? This isn't about them anymore. For once in my life, I'm choosing what I want. And I want this. I want you. His eyes softened, relief and tenderness mingling. He bent and kissed me there, between the vines, with sunlight pouring over us like blessing. For the first time, I didn't feel guilt, only freedom. But freedom has a cost. 2 days later, Nora called. Her voice was icy. If you continue this relationship, don't expect me or Daniel to include you in family matters, holidays, events. The grandchildren, you'll be making a choice. Mom, him or us. My heart lurched. The thought of being cut off from my grandchildren was unbearable. Why are you doing this? I whispered. Because you're humiliating us. Because you're being reckless. Because you've forgotten your place. Her words echoed long after she hung up. Forgotten my place. Maybe I had. Maybe that was the point. When Lucas came by that evening, I told him everything, including the threat about the grandchildren. His face darkened. She's trying to break you. Don't let her. But they're my family, I said, voice cracking. My grandchildren are my joy. If I lose them, he took my hands in his. You won't lose them. Children grow. They'll see the truth one day. But if you surrender your happiness now, what will you teach them? That love ends at 50. That women must fade into the background once they've raised their families. No. You'll show them courage. You'll show them that it's never too late. His conviction wrapped around me like armor. Still, the ache remained. The choice looming ahead felt impossible. Love or family, freedom or belonging. But deep down, I knew. The real choice was between living half a life or a whole one. The days after Nora's ultimatum stretched long and heavy, like storm clouds refusing to break. I moved through my routines, watering plants, folding laundry, making tea, but everything carried the weight of her words. Him or us? Lucas tried to distract me. He suggested outings, sent me little notes, even left flowers on my doorstep when he had late shifts. His gestures warmed me, but the shadow remained. Every time I thought of my grandchildren, laughter echoing in my memory, the threat twisted like a knife. Still, I could not unfeel what Lucas awakened in me. I could not go back to silence, to shrinking, to invisibility. It was a Sunday when the storm finally broke. Nora had arranged a brunch at her house. She called it a family meeting. I almost declined, but something in me wanted to face whatever waited. When I arrived, the tension was already thick. Daniel sat at the head of the table, stiff-backed, his expression unreadable. Nora flitted around, pouring coffee, her smile brittle. The grandchildren sat quietly, sensing the undercurrent. Halfway through the meal, Daniel cleared his throat. "Mom," he began, "we're concerned. About your situation, I echoed. With Dr. Whitmore, Nora supplied, her tone laced with disdain. "It's not appropriate. It's not respectable. Respectable. That old, suffocating word," Daniel continued. "We think it would be best if you ended it. For the family's sake." For years I might have nodded, swallowed my truth, complied, but not now. "I love him," I said simply. Forks froze. Cups clinked against saucers. Nora's face turned crimson. "You what?" she hissed. "I love him," I repeated, my voice steadier this time. "And I'm not ending it because you disapprove. My happiness is not a scandal. It is my right." The room erupted. Daniel raised his voice. Nora accused me of selfishness. Even the grandchildren looked wide. But in the chaos, I felt strangely calm. I had spoken my truth. I could not be silenced again. Nora did not take my defiance quietly. Within days, whispers began circulating through her circle of friends. A neighbor stopped me on the street, asking slyly, "So, Evelyn, I hear you've snagged yourself a doctor." Another time, at the grocery store, two women I barely knew leaned into each other, eyes darting toward me, lips moving with words I didn't need to hear to understand. Nora was poisoning the air with gossip at first. Shame threatened to pull me under. I avoided certain shops, ducked my head when whispers followed me, but then, one morning I caught my reflection in the bakery window. I saw a woman standing tall, silver hair shining, eyes bright. I saw a life not scandal, and I thought, why am I hiding? I've done nothing wrong, Lucas of course. Notice the shift. "You look lighter today," he said as we walked by the river one evening. "I've decided I'm done apologizing." I told him, "Let them talk. Let them whisper. Their opinions don't define me." His smile was proud, almost boyish. "That's the Evelyn I see." We sat on a bench, watching the water catch the sunset. He took my hand, weaving his fingers with mine. "I've been thinking," he said softly. "We don't need galas or approval or anyone's permission. What if we just lived, traveled, explored, laughed? The years ahead may not be endless, but they can be ours." Tears pricked my eyes. The idea of choosing joy deliberately was both terrifying and intoxicating. "Maybe," I whispered. "It's time I finally start living for myself." But Nora wasn't finished. One afternoon, I arrived at my church for a community meeting. Whispers swirled as I entered. A woman I'd known for decades leaned close, her pitying expression unbearable. "I'm sorry, Evelyn," she said, "but perhaps you should know. Your daughter's been saying some things. That Dr. Whitmore is taking advantage of you. That you're confused." Confused. The word landed like a stone. It implied frailty, incompetence, diminished capacity. I left the meeting early, hands trembling, heart pounding. Outside, I sat in my car, shaking with anger. Nora wasn't just gossiping. Now she was questioning my sanity, my ability to make my own choices. When Lucas arrived later that evening, I told him everything. His jaw tightened. "She's trying to strip you of your autonomy. If she convinces people you're unstable, she could even move to take control legally." My stomach lurched. Would she really do that? He took my hands. "I've seen it happen. But Evelyn, you are not weak. You are not confused. You are strong. And if it comes to it, I will stand with you." His faith steadied me, but the fear lingered. That night I dreamed of cages. Invisible bars closing in while voices outside debated whether I was fit to leave. I woke drenched in sweat, gasping the next morning. I called Nora. "We need to talk," I said. We met at her house. In the gleaming kitchen that smelled faintly of lemon polish. "Nora," I began, "I know what you've been saying. That I'm confused. That Lucas is manipulating me. It stops now." She crossed her arms. "Mom, I'm trying to protect you. Everyone sees you're vulnerable. I am not vulnerable," I snapped, louder than I intended. "I am not weak. I am not senile. I am in love. And if you can't respect that, then perhaps it's you who's confused." Her mouth opened, then closed. For once, she had no immediate retort. I stood, shoulders squared. "I will not let you control me anymore. Not my money, not my choices, not my happiness. If you truly care about me, you'll stop this war. If not, then I'll know where we stand." And with that, I left. Back home, I felt shaky, uncertain, but also free. I sat by the window with my journal, pen scratching across the page. Today, I told her the truth. Today, I chose myself. I don't know what comes next, but for the first time, I feel ready. When Lucas called that evening, I told him what I had done. He listened quietly, then said, "I'm proud of you, Evelyn. Whatever battles remain, you're no longer fighting as the woman who doubts herself. You're fighting as the woman who knows her worth." His words wrapped around me like armor. For the first time in years, I believed them. The days after my confrontation with Nora were both liberating and unsettling. Liberating, because I had finally spoken the truth without flinching. Unsettling, because silence from Nora was never silence for long. She hadn't called since that day in her kitchen. No sharp words, no pitying sighs, no veiled insults. And that quiet worried me more than her open attacks ever. Had I filled the gap with Lucas? We spent our afternoons walking through the park, sitting by the river, or simply talking on my porch as the sky darkened into evening. He shared stories from his medical career triumphs, heartbreaks, near miracles. I shared memories I had long buried, my childhood fears, the loneliness of my marriage, the small joys I had clung to like treasures. One evening, as cicadas hummed in the trees, I told him something I had never voiced aloud. "Sometimes," I said softly, "I think I became invisible even to myself. Not just to Richard or to Nora, but to me. I forgot who I was, what I loved, what I wanted." Lucas reached across the small table, his hand covering mine. "Then let's find her again. The Evelyn who dreams, who laughs, who lives." Tears welled in my eyes. "And if she's gone?" He shook his head. "She's not gone. She's waiting." The waiting Evelyn began to stir. It started with small things. I bought a new dress, blue silk that shimmered like the river. I wore it to dinner with Lucas, my heart pounding as heads turned when we entered the restaurant. For once, the stares didn't feel like judgment. They felt like recognition. I started painting again, too. The canvases were clumsy at first, my brush hesitant. But slowly, color returned to my world, not just on canvas but within me. Lucas noticed. "Every time I see you, you're brighter," he said one afternoon, as he watched me tuck a streak of red paint across the page. "It's like watching spring return after a long winter." I laughed, embarrassed but pleased. "Careful, doctor. You'll make me believe I'm blooming." "You are," he said simply. But Nora had not forgotten me. One Saturday morning, while I was weeding the garden, my neighbor Mrs. Turner leaned over the fence. "Evelyn," she said, her voice tinged with concern, "I don't mean to pry, but is it true that Nora's looking into guardianship?" My trowel slipped from my hand. "Guardianship." Mrs. Turner nodded, lowering her voice. "She's been telling people you're not making sound decisions anymore. That Dr. Whitmore is taking advantage. She's hinted she might need to step in legally. For your protection." For my protection. The words hit like a blow. Guardianship would strip me of everything: my independence, my choices, even my finances. I would be reduced to a ward, a child in the eyes of the law. That evening, I told Lucas. His face darkened. "She's escalating," he said. "If she files, you'll need to be prepared." "But Evelyn, you have allies. Neighbors, friends, me. People who can testify that you're sound, capable, clear." I swallowed hard. "But she's my daughter. And you are her mother," Lucas replied. "This isn't about love anymore. It's about control." The thought gnawed at me. That was Nora's determination, fueled by fear of losing me, or by fear of losing the control she'd always had. I turned the question over in my mind as I painted late into the night. My brush moved furiously, red streaks across black, until the canvas looked like a battlefield. When I stepped back, I realized that's exactly what it was. A battlefield. Between her will and mine, and for the first time, I wasn't sure which of us would yield. One afternoon, after a particularly tense day, I met Lucas at the botanical gardens. The roses were in bloom, scenting the air with sweetness. I leaned into his arm as we walked, my voice trembling. "What if she wins?" What if I lose myself again? He stopped, turning me gently to face him. You won't, because you're not fighting alone anymore. And Evelyn, you've already done the hardest part. You found your voice. You claimed it. That can't be taken from you. Not by Nora. Not by anyone. The certainty in his eyes steadied me. I exhaled, nodding. Then I'll fight. Not long after, I received a letter. It was from a lawyer. My heart raced as I opened it. But it wasn't guardianship papers, not yet. Instead, it was an invitation. Nora wanted mediation. A formal meeting with a neutral party to discuss concerns regarding her mother's well-being. I laughed, bitterly. Mediation, as though my happiness required negotiation, but Lucas urged me to consider. If nothing else, it's a chance to show you are clear, strong, and unshaken. Let her see it with her own eyes. I agreed, though fear churned in my stomach. The day of the meeting, I dressed deliberately. No gray cardigans, no timid skirts. I wore the blue silk dress, a strand of pearls and lipstick, the color of wine. Lucas offered to come, but I shook my head. This is something I need to do myself. The mediator's office smelled faintly of coffee and old books. Nora sat across the table, immaculate in her tailored suit, eyes sharp with disdain. The mediator, a kindly man with silver hair, began, "We're here to discuss Evelyn's well-being and address any family concerns." Nora launched in immediately. "My mother has been manipulated. She's making reckless choices. She's vulnerable." I let her speak. Let her paint me as fragile, feeble, a woman in decline. And then, when she finally paused, I straightened in my chair and spoke. "My name is Evelyn Hart. I am 71 years old. I pay my own bills. I cook my own meals. I drive, I read, I paint, I volunteer. I am not vulnerable. I am not confused. I am in love. And if that makes you uncomfortable, Nora, then the problem is not with me. It's with you." The mediator nodded thoughtfully. "Mrs. Hart seems articulate, self-aware, and capable of making her own decisions." For the first time, Nora's composure faltered. Her lips tightened, but her eyes flickered with something like doubt. I leaned forward. "You can't control me anymore. You can't dictate my life. If you want a relationship with me, it will be built on respect, not power. If you can't manage that, then perhaps we need distance." Silence hung heavy. Finally, Nora stood, her chair scraping against the floor. "You'll regret this," she spat, before sweeping from the room. I sat still, my pulse racing but my spirit soaring. For once, I had not only defended myself, I had won. That evening, Lucas poured champagne into 2 flutes. To Evelyn, he toasted, lifting his glass. "The bravest woman I know." I clinked mine against his, laughter bubbling from my chest. To freedom, we drank, and for the first time in years, the taste of victory was sweet on my tongue. After the mediation, the air around me shifted. It was as though I had walked out of a locked room into open sky. For the first time in decades, I felt like my life was truly mine. Nora didn't call, didn't visit. The silence that once would have gutted me now felt like space room to breathe, to grow, to reclaim the parts of myself I had abandoned. And Lucas was beside me, steady as ever, reminding me not just who I was, but who I could still become. One morning, as we sipped coffee on my porch, he surprised me with an envelope. "What's this?" I asked, sliding a finger under the flap. "Open it," he urged. A mischievous glint in his eye. Inside was a set of brochures. Rome, Vienna, Barcelona. "Lucas," I breathed, my fingers trembling. He smiled softly. "I thought maybe we could travel, see the world, together. It's never too late." The brochures blurred as tears filled my eyes. Travel had been my dream once, back when I was a girl scribbling plans in a notebook I kept hidden under my bed. But Richard had dismissed the idea as frivolous, and I had eventually stopped dreaming at all. "Do you mean it?" I whispered. "I mean it," he said. "One city, 1 week. Just to start." I laughed through tears, the sound strange and beautiful in my ears. "Yes," I said without hesitation. "Yes." The weeks leading up to our trip were electric. I bought a new suitcase, bright red, impossible to miss. I dusted off my passport, long expired, and Lucas drove me to the office to renew it. I even allowed myself to buy a guidebook for Paris, though I could barely believe I would soon walk those very streets. The night before we left, I stood by the mirror holding a silk scarf I hadn't worn in years. For a moment, I saw not Evelyn the widow, Evelyn the mother, Evelyn the burden. I saw Evelyn the traveler, the lover, the woman blooming again. I tied the scarf around my neck and whispered. Tomorrow, Paris was a revelation. The first sight of the Eiffel Tower left me breathless, its iron lacework gleaming in the sun. Lucas and I strolled along the Seine, our hands entwined, pausing to watch painters capture the city in quick, colorful strokes. We ate croissants so flaky they melted on our tongues. We wandered through the Louvre, laughing when we got lost among the endless galleries. At night, we sat at tiny cafes, sipping wine and watching the world go by. It wasn't just the city that dazzled, MIT was myself. Alive in it, one evening as we stood on a bridge lit by golden lamplight, Lucas turned to me. Evelyn, he said, his voice low. Do you know how radiant you are? I shook my head, smiling shyly. I feel new. That's because you are, he said, brushing a strand of hair from my face. And then he kissed me, with all the tenderness of someone who had waited his whole life for this moment. But even amid the wonder, I sensed shadows in Lucas sometimes. When he thought I wasn't looking, his eyes grew distant. At night, he would wake suddenly, his breath uneven. Though he always brushed it off as a dream, one morning, I pressed him gently. Lucas, I said as we lingered over breakfast in a quiet cafe. What weighs on you? He hesitated, swirling his coffee. Then he sighed. My wife, Margaret, he began slowly. She was ill for years before she passed. Cancer. I did everything I could, but in the end, his voice cracked. In the end, I couldn't save her. And part of me has never forgiven myself. My heart clenched. I reached across the table, taking his hand. Lucas, you gave her love. You gave her care. That is not failure. Tears glistened in his eyes. Sometimes I wonder if it's selfish. What we have. If loving again means I've betrayed her memory. I squeezed his hand firmly. No. Love doesn't erase love. It expands. Margaret will always be part of you. And now, so am I. Both can exist. For a long moment, he looked at me, as though my words were a balm he hadn't known he needed. Finally, he whispered, you're right. And I am so grateful for you, Evelyn. We sat in silence then. Not heavy, but healing. The city bustled around us, and for once, the weight lifted from his eyes. When we returned home, Paris lingered in me like perfume. I moved differently, spoke differently, lived differently. I signed up for an art class at the community center, laughing with women who, like me, were rediscovering themselves after loss and change. I even hosted a small dinner party, something I hadn't done since Richard's days. The house rang with laughter and warmth instead of tension and silence. Life felt wide again, expansive, but Nora, though quiet, had not disappeared one afternoon. As I came home from class, I found her car in my driveway. She was sitting on the porch, arms crossed, her face tight. Nora, I said cautiously. She stood, her eyes sharp. So it's true, Paris. Traveling with him, flaunting it. Do you have any idea how humiliating this is for me? I stared at her, stunned. Humiliating. For you? Yes, she snapped. My friends, my colleagues, they whisper. They ask questions. Do you realize what it does to my reputation when my own mother runs around like some teenager? Something in me broke then, not from pain, but from clarity. Nora, I said evenly, this isn't about my happiness. It never was. It's always been about your image, your control, but I won't shrink for you anymore. Not for gossip, not for appearances, not for your pride. Her face flushed. So you choose him over your family? I choose me, I said firmly. And if you loved me, you'd want that too. For a heartbeat, silence stretched between us. Her jaw tightened, her eyes flickered, but she said nothing. She simply turned, walked to her car, and drove away. I stood there on the porch, my heart pounding. It wasn't victory, not yet, but it was truth, and it was mine that night. Lucas held me close. You're stronger than you know, he murmured. I rested my head on his chest. Maybe, but sometimes strength feels lonely. He kissed the top of my head. Not anymore. Not while I'm here. And in that moment I believed him. Autumn came quietly, painting the trees gold and crimson. The air carried the crisp promise of change, and for the first time in years, I welcomed it instead of dreading it. But Nora's silence lingered like a storm waiting just beyond the horizon. Lucas warned me gently, she isn't finished, Evelyn. People like Nora rarely surrender control without one last attempt. He was right. It came on a Tuesday afternoon. I had just finished hanging one of my paintings in the living room, a burst of wildflowers in bold colors. When the doorbell rang, Nora stood there, her expression cool and formal. Beside her was a man in a gray suit holding a folder. Mother, she said flatly, this is Mr. Hale, my attorney. My stomach tightened. May we come in? She asked, though it wasn't really a question. I hesitated, then nodded, leading them to the living room. Mr. Hale perched on the edge of the sofa, opening his folder. We're here to discuss your estate and decision-making going forward, he said smoothly. Your daughter has concerns about your well-being. She feels it would be prudent to place certain safeguards. I cut him off. Safeguards. Nora's voice was sharp. Mom, you're 71. You're vulnerable. You're being taken advantage of by a man who sees an easy target. Anger surged hot in my chest. Lucas is not taking advantage of me. He's given me more respect than you ever have." Her eyes narrowed. "You're blinded? And if you won't see reason, I'll make sure the courts do." Mr. Hale cleared his throat. "Guardianship proceedings are an option, but perhaps mediation again." "No," I said firmly. I've already explained. I am of sound mind. I will not hand my life to lawyers because my daughter cannot accept that I am happy." Nora rose abruptly. "If you won't cooperate, I'll proceed without you." She stormed out, Mr. Hale scrambling to follow. When the door slammed behind them, my knees weakened. I sank into a chair, shaking. The battle was not over. It had only sharpened that evening. Lucas held my hands tightly as I told him everything. "We'll fight this," he said. "Legally, emotionally, however, we must. She won't take your life from you. But what if she does?" I whispered. "What if a judge believes her lies? That I'm confused, manipulated, incapable?" He cupped my face gently. "Then we'll show them the truth. You're stronger, clearer, more alive than ever. No one who sees you could think otherwise." His faith steadied me. Still, fear lingered. The weeks that followed were exhausting. Letters from Nora's attorney arrived, each one colder than the last. I consulted a lawyer of my own, gathering documentation, statements from friends and neighbors who vouched for my clarity. It felt surreal, defending my sanity as though it were a fragile thing. But each time doubt crept in, I painted. I poured my fury and fear into canvases blazing reds, defiant blues, streaks of gold that refused to be buried. My house became a gallery of rebellion, proof that my spirit was unbroken. Lucas marveled at them one evening. "These paintings," he said softly, "they're not just art, they're declarations. Evelyn, this is you shouting into the world. I am here. I am alive." Tears burned my eyes. "Then I'll keep shouting." The hearing date loomed. I dressed with care, that morning cream blouse, tailored skirt, hair pinned neatly, pearls gleaming at my throat. Lucas walked beside me into the courthouse, his hand warm against mine. Inside, Nora sat with her lawyer, her face a mask of control. She didn't look at me. The judge entered, and the proceedings began. Nora's attorney spoke first, painting me as vulnerable, confused, at risk. Nora nodded solemnly, as though carrying a heavy burden. When it was my turn, my lawyer asked simple questions. "Mrs. Hart, how do you spend your days?" "I paint. I volunteer at the library. I attend art classes. I cook, I read, I manage my finances." "Do you understand why we're here today?" "Yes, because my daughter cannot accept that. I am in love and happy." Murmurs rippled through the room. The judge studied me carefully. "Mrs. Hart, do you believe you are capable of making your own decisions?" I met his gaze squarely. "Yes. I am 71, not senile. I have made mistakes in my life, staying silent too long, letting others control me. But I will not make that mistake again. I am capable, and I deserve the right to live freely." Silence followed. Finally, the judge turned to Nora. "From what I see and hear today, your mother is of sound mind. Guardianship is not warranted. I advise you, Ms. Hart, to respect her autonomy." Nora's face flushed crimson. Relief surged through me so powerfully my knees nearly gave out. Lucas steadied me, his eyes shining with pride. Outside the courthouse, the autumn wind whipped around us. I breathed deeply, the air crisp and clean, tasting of victory. Lucas wrapped his arm around me. "You did it, Evelyn." I shook my head, smiling through tears. "We did it. But the battle left scars." Weeks passed before Nora reached out again. When she finally did, it was with a short letter slipped into my mailbox. "I don't understand you. I don't agree with you. But I see I cannot control you. Maybe one day I'll accept that. Until then, goodbye." I read it twice, my chest heavy. It wasn't reconciliation. It wasn't forgiveness. It was distance. And though it hurt, it was also honest. I placed the letter in a drawer and whispered, "Goodbye, Nora." For now, life after the storm felt fragile but precious. Lucas. And I spent afternoons planning small trips, coastal towns, mountain trails, hidden gardens. We laughed easily, spoke openly, and cherished each moment as though it were borrowed time. One evening, as we watched the sunset from my porch, he took my hand. "Evelyn," he said softly, "I know the road ahead won't always be smooth. But whatever comes, sickness, sorrow, joy, want to walk it with you? Not as a companion. As a partner." My heart stilled. "Are you asking?" He smiled. "Yes. Will you marry me?" Tears blurred my vision, but my voice was steady. "Yes, Lucas. 1,000 times yes." He slid a simple gold band onto my finger, and we kissed as the sky burned with twilight. For the first time in my life, love wasn't duty, wasn't burden, wasn't silence, that it was freedom. It was mine, asterisk. The winter snow fell soft and steady the morning of our wedding. I never thought I would marry again, not after decades of compromise, silence, and sacrifice. Yet there I stood, 61 years old, fastening a pearl clasp at my neck, preparing to walk toward a future I had chosen freely. Our wedding wasn't grand. Lucas and I wanted simplicity, family, a few close friends, and warmth. The ceremony would be held at the conservatory downtown where orchids bloomed in the glass house, even in the heart of winter. I chose a gown of soft dove-gray silk, elegant without pretense. My silver hair was swept into a loose chignon, tendrils framing my face. When I looked into the mirror, I saw not a bride chasing youth, but a woman stepping fully into her age. Her truth, her second bloom. Margaret helped adjust my veil. "You look radiant, Evelyn," she whispered, tears shining in her eyes. For once, I believed it. Guests gathered among the palms and lilies, their laughter mingling with the trickle of fountains. Strings played a gentle melody as I entered on Lucas's arm, not because tradition demanded it, but because we wanted to step forward together. When the officiant spoke of love blooming at any age, I felt Lucas's hand squeeze mine. His gaze was steady, filled with quiet joy. "I promise," he said, "to honor the years behind us and cherish the years ahead, however many they may be. I promise to see you not as someone fading, but as someone shining." Tears spilled down my cheeks. My voice trembled, but my heart was sure. I promised to live fully, to speak boldly, and to love without fear. With you, Lucas, I have found not only love, but freedom. When we kissed, the conservatory filled with applause. I felt both young and timeless, rooted and renewed. The reception was small, intimate, filled with laughter and the clink of glasses. I danced with Margaret, then with my grandson, who giggled at the novelty of leading me in circles. Lucas and I swayed slowly under twinkling lights, the world narrowing to the sound of his heartbeat against mine. It should have been perfect. But then I saw her. Nora. She stood at the edge of the crowd, not dressed for celebration, but for formality, a black coat, her expression unreadable. For a moment, I froze, fear and hope colliding. She hadn't RSVP'd. I hadn't expected her. I excused myself gently from Lucas's arms and crossed the floor. "Nora," I breathed. She looked me over, her eyes lingering on the ring on my hand, the joy in my face. "I almost didn't come," she admitted softly. I told myself I wouldn't, but then I thought about my kids, about what they'd remember, and I didn't want them to say I wasn't there when their grandmother married. Emotion clogged my throat. "I didn't expect your blessing, but your presence, it means more than you know." She looked away, struggling. "I don't understand you, Mom. I don't understand how you could change so much, so suddenly. But I see. You're happy? Really happy." Tears blurred my vision. "Yes, I am." For the first time, a long silence stretched between us. Then, cautiously, Nora leaned forward and kissed my cheek. "Congratulations," she whispered. And just like that, she slipped away into the night, leaving behind both ache and hope. Later, as Lucas and I left the conservatory, snowflakes whirled around us like confetti. He wrapped his coat around my shoulders, his smile warm against the cold. "Are you all right?" he asked gently. "Yes," I whispered. "Better than all right. For the first time, I feel whole." We walked into the snowy night, hand in hand. Our footsteps side by side. Spring came again, and with it, new beginnings. Our home filled with light and laughter, with paintings hung on every wall. Lucas tended his garden while I worked in my studio, the scent of roses drifting through open windows. Sometimes, on quiet evenings, we'd sit together on the porch, watching the sunset paint the sky. He would take my hand and I would think, "This is it. This is what I've waited for all my life. Not perfection, not control, but love, chosen freely. Love that grew not in the flush of youth, but in the strength of age. Love that proved it is never too late to bloom again." As I finish writing this story, I see my reflection in the window, silver hair, lined face, eyes still bright. I am Evelyn Hart. I am 71 years old. I am a wife, a mother, a grandmother, an artist, and above all, a woman who refused to fade. The world may see me as nearing twilight, but I know the truth. I am in full bloom, and the best chapters of my life are still unfolding. If you enjoyed this journey of heart and courage, hit subscribe and never miss a story that inspires. Like, share, and comment your thoughts. Let us know how you would embrace a second chance at love. Turn on notifications for more heartfelt stories that remind us it's never too late to follow our own path.